New York Mercantile. Thank you. Wall Street, many on Wall Street are still stunned by the abrupt resignation of Citi's Vikram Pandit. We want to get some reaction now from a lawmaker on Capitol Hill. Joining us, Republican Senator of Louisiana, David Vitter. Senator Vitter is also a member of the Senate Banking Committee. Welcome, sir. Welcome to CNBC.
Thank you. Good morning. Good to be with y'all.
The Washington Post suggests today that actually the man had very few friends on Capitol Hill and that very few people will miss him, that he didn't have the skills to court the people in Washington that he needed to. Is that a fair comment? Are you sad to see him go?
I'm not particularly sad. I think rightly or wrongly, he represented, Citi in particular moving away from a solid commercial bank sort of tradition into a much more higher risk investment banking tradition. A lot of us are concerned about that movement in the mega banks. So I don't know anybody who's distraught about his resignation.
So what do you think should happen now?
Well, I don't know exactly what this resignation means. As you suggested, it was a big surprise. I hope what it means is that Citi is going back in a more solid, conservative commercial banking direction. They were the biggest recipient of bailout dollars, almost $500 billion to one institution alone. I hope they're going back to their more solid, stable commercial banking roots.
And Senator Vitter, what's your immediate reaction to the new CEO, Mike Corbat? A lot of focus is on the fact that he was previously the chief of Citi Holdings, which is Citi's bad bank, and that during the crisis, he had a lot of face time with regulators over deciding what assets go in there, how to slim down Citi. Have you had any interaction with him, and what's your take?
I don't know him personally, have not had interaction, so I don't have a big reaction. In terms of his background, it sounds like one of his greatest skill sets is dealing with the regulators, dealing with other folks in Washington. That's a sign of the times, I guess. I'm not sure it's a particularly healthy sign of the times, but it seems to be a sign of the times.
Because banks are increasingly run in part by Washington.
Correct.
Yes.
Washington has become the financial center instead of New York. That's a dangerous trend that I want to reverse.
So do you think it's fair that he appears to be taking the blame from the board for the fact that he was unaware that Ben Bernanke would reject his application to buy back stock? That seems to have been a big issue for many on the board, that he got that wrong. He said he was friends with Ben Bernanke and he wasn't, despite the fact he spent one day a month in Washington. Or could it be argued that actually the moving feast here was the regulator, and perhaps the bank hadn't appreciated the degree to which the regulator was getting more tough?
Well, I hope being friends with Ben Bernanke does not change the whole Fed's decision on major issues, number one. But number two, certainly it's difficult to predict the reaction of the current regulatory environment, so I wouldn't be too harsh on anyone given that.
Senator, there's been so much discussion about toothless boards with the CEO in their pocket. Here we have a situation where this, out of nowhere, this Citi board appears to have been emboldened to make this move. I wonder if you think that is long-term healthy for the sector, if it's a silver lining to all of this?
Well, I think in general that is healthy. I think given everything at stake, given everything we've lived through, thank God, since 2007 and 2008, boards better be very, very hands-on and involved in thinking about strategic decisions every step of the way. So I think it is, in general, a healthy sign.
Senator Vitter, you said that it's an unfortunate consequence that Washington has been responsible for steering the direction of the banks versus New York, and that you'd like to see a shift back. But I'm looking at a quote from you in the New York Times earlier this week that there's a growing nonpartisan consensus to do a lot more to limit the size of the mega banks. What exactly is going on in Washington, and how are pens being put to paper on this issue? And,
well, there are a lot of ideas floating out there. The one I'm most focused on, along with a Democratic colleague, Sherrod Brown of Ohio, is higher capital requirements for the mega banks, and also, just as importantly, making them very transparent and clear, which I don't think the Basel III requirements are at all. I think that would help correct the imbalance caused by too big to fail. I think too big to fail is alive and well. It is hurting our tradition of regional and community banks in this country. I think we need to correct that, and one way to do it is higher capital requirements, but make those requirements very clear and transparent, which Basel III is not.
But what you need for a good conversation is kind of an equal weighting on both sides. And many would argue, with the problems that Jamie Dimon has at JP Morgan, that there is no longer a major bank statesman who can go up to Washington and argue on behalf of the industry as still you hammer out Dodd-Frank, let's not forget. Do you think that's going to be to the detriment of shareholders in banks, and ultimately the economy as a result?
It sure hasn't been so far, because the mega banks have only increased in market share since the crisis. That's the sort of trend that I'm concerned about. I think Dodd-Frank isn't the only cause of it, but it's actually helped it along. It's ironically favored the mega banks versus other institutions in an unhealthy way.
It's good to see you, Senator. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much.
Senator Vitter joining
Appreciate
us there from the Senate Banking Committee. Thank you.